Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the inaugural Duke New York Industry Insights event on the business of Broadway, Blue Devils Go Backstage. Duke New York Industry Insights is a 60-minute virtual series designed to help the Duke New York community learn about specific industries, gain valuable professional insights, and foster career connections. The program begins with a moderated panel discussion, followed by 15 minutes of audience Q&A, with a 15-minute post-event breakout rooms to meet, network, and continue the conversations with other attendees following. We hope you will join us for upcoming episodes as well. As a reminder, we ask you to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras for the moderated discussion portion of our program this evening. We invite you to turn your cameras on when that's finished so we can see you all during the Q&A portion that immediately follows. My name is Karen Gottlieb, class of '89 and a Duke New York board member and DEMAN New York co-chair. I'll be your host tonight for a fantastic panel featuring Nathaniel Hill, class of 2012, founder of Broadway Plus VIP Services. He is a familiar face to many of you from our past annual Duke New York Broadway events. It is because of Nathaniel that we've been able to get group tickets and host talkback nights after performances of smash shows like Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen. Nathaniel will be joined tonight by our wonderful panelist, Sara, Beth, Zivitz, class of '02, who's a producer of several Broadway and off-Broadway productions. Martavius, Parrish, class of '14, who's a performer and teaching artist at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. And Margaret Skoglund, class of '10, who's the general manager of KGM Theatrical Management. If you'd like to read their full bios, please check the chat where there is a link you can click on to find out more information about each of them. The program and chat is being recorded, so if you miss something, it will be available to you for later viewing on both the Duke New York LinkedIn group and the DEMAN Lounge web pages. Our program tonight will begin with Nathaniel Hill leading a moderated discussion with the panelists about current issues facing the Broadway industry, followed by the audience Q&A, and then the breakout rooms to continue the conversation. Feel free to type your questions for our panelists into the chat throughout the program. And with that, I will turn it over to Nathaniel to kick off the program.
Thank you, Karen, and welcome everyone. We are very sad, of course, not to be in a Broadway theater together like we usually are each October, but we really appreciate your joining us tonight to check in on what's happening in our industry during an unexpected year, to say the least. And welcome, my friends. I'm lucky that I am friends with everyone on this panel. I often say when Duke students reach out to me, so what's it like being a Duke alum in the theater business? I feel like I'm the only one so interested in this right now. And I say, you know, it's the best thing ever because we have about 1 or 2 a year and we're all friends and we all know each other and we all support and love one another and follow one another's careers. So I feel very lucky to be here with Sara, Martavius, and Margaret, and let's get the party started. I think since obviously you all have done and accomplished so much since your graduation day, and we all know a career in the theater is full of many, many jobs, sometimes many jobs every year, and we could do that forever, but I thought a fun way to frame it would be I'd like to ask you what you were doing on March 1st of this year, and what you were doing on October 27th of this year to get started in a minute or two, if you can, please. Let's start with Margaret.
March 1st of this year. Well, hello, Duke University. I was helping 2 producers get a show up at the Apollo Theater on 125th Street. I general manage on Broadway at a place called KGM. And usually there are 41 Broadway houses, but we wanted to have this play called Blue, which was written by a Duke University alum, Charles Randolph Wright. And we wanted to get this play up at the Apollo, and then everything changed. Yesterday, what was I doing? Let's see, I was doing a little work for the insurance claim on that production, and then also a lot of really great work with a nonprofit I work with called Open Stage Project.
Awesome. What about you, Sara?
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here among Dukies. So a little bit different than the rest of the group in that I don't spend all of my days working on and off Broadway, although that would be a lot of fun and maybe one day I will. I actually work full-time in fintech for a company called Affirm. But that said, I've been doing work on and off Broadway for about 7 or 8 years. And on March 1st, while doing my day job, I was also preparing to be involved in the off-Broadway production of a new musical called Between the Lines, which is based on a short novel by Jodi Picoult, who most of you probably have read some of her books, that she co-wrote with her daughter, Samantha, and it was being adapted into an off-Broadway musical. Of course, that has been indefinitely delayed, but we were gearing up to be at second stage and hope to be sometime next year. As of yesterday, I was doing my day job and we'll continue to do that until we can get back in our theaters together.
Sweet. I guess I am next. So I had to check my calendar, but on March 1st, I was actually in callbacks for Ain't Too Proud on Broadway.
Oh.
So yeah, that was weird to be like, oh, we're actually halting the process. And so that was fun. As of yesterday, I've actually, this is like a public exclusive, but I've been working on a startup that centers around artistry. And so we actually finished our first draft of the wireframe for what we're building for that, so.
Nice, well, thank you all. Me, with my company Broadway Plus, I, in March, was busy helping people who were traveling to New York, mostly, plan amazing Broadway experiences, whether it was backstage tours, entire weekends, dinners and parties with the cast of Broadway shows. And now I am doing a somewhat similar thing, but all on Zoom. I built a platform where we have about 250 Broadway actors connected in, and you can book them and support them, book their time, whether it's just a meet and greet or a Q&A, a virtual concert, a singing, acting, dancing lesson, and all sorts of things in between. It's been a crazy challenge and exciting to try to help people support themselves this year and help Broadway fans connect with the actors from the shows that they love in a different way. So let's see, where should we go with this fun conversation? Ooh, there goes my face. With this conversation we have today. I think let's talk about, what the status update is. Maybe some of our viewers are wondering, like, when are shows reopening? What I've heard the latest from Broadway producers and league members is that the official reopen date right now is the very end of May. I think it's May 30th or 31st. We are optimistic about that. I think the reality that I've heard is that, it's not going to be an on button and suddenly we have 35 shows running again. It's more likely to be a 6 or maybe even 12-month process whereby some of the most successful shows might be able to reopen next summer. More sure next fall. You might see Hamilton and Wicked and perhaps The Lion King start off the bat, and then it might be a slow ramping up until we have a full season, hopefully by the end of the year. What has everyone else heard? What's the latest?
What's the gossip? Sarah Beth, are you a Broadway League member?
I'm actually not, for not really a good reason, but I will say that to add on to what Nate was saying, there are a lot of things going on to ensure safety in our theaters. Obviously, we don't know if June 1st or whatever the date is a hard date. No one really wants to speculate exactly when it will be and agree it will be a phased rollout, but a lot of things are going on behind the scenes with respect to air filtration systems in theaters. Will there be rapid testing, on site? What do concessions look like, in a post-COVID world and things of that nature. So there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved, as there always are armies of people involved in making Broadway and off-Broadway shows happen. So, all of those things have to happen in step. And then, of course, a vaccine is essential of course, because, nowhere, even in sports, which most of us are probably, since we're Dukies, big sports fans too, but do we have such a large quantity of people in such close quarters? I think another thing that is important to consider is that, the average Broadway show might be sort of, 12 to 1,800 people in attendance, where Off-Broadway might be more like 100 to 500. And so the considerations when you have smaller crowds are quite different, and the regulations likely will be different as well, contingent upon crowd size. So I think there's a lot to be shared, and I think that the regulations will be stringent to ensure the safety of people across the spectrum of ages.
Something I found myself explaining a lot is that, unfortunately, at least with Broadway shows, there's really no way to do limited capacity. The economic model is such that we have to be selling a good 80% of our tickets at 100% of the amount we want to sell them for just to break even. It's a tough economic model. And so, maybe at the NFL or another entertainment sector that has, film and television rights, they might be able to do a limited capacity, but with Broadway's, there's just no way. So we have to have, like you said, Sarah, a vaccine available to everyone working in the building for their safety. And, we have to have an audience that's willing to come back at full capacity and pay the prices that they're used to, or at least close to them, we hope. And that's just the reality. Margaret, how do you, I know a lot of what you do is, perhaps we call it a financial model forecasting, if we want it to be very fancy. Gross potential would perhaps be the industry term. How do you see all that panning out, and what's the financial aspects looking like?
Yeah, we like our modeling here on Broadway. We try to borrow from the financial sector a little bit. So unions are a big consideration, right? So Broadway is 13, 14, 17 unions in some of these houses. So
every person working is in a union pretty much.
Exactly. So those are different rates, different benefit structures across the board. All of a sudden, changing that to reduced costs, I mean, those are a lot of conversations that need to happen, that are currently happening, but it's not as if in one fell swoop, we can slash prices 50% and reopen to 70% capacity, to Nathaniel's point. So unfortunately, when we can look at what's happening in Europe, where there's a lot more government subsidized arts, that's not quite what the commercial model is on Broadway. And, the last thing I'll add on, we absolutely were looking at a one-person show at a St. James Theater. We absolutely were looking at a two-hander at the, Give Me Another Empty House. But to squeeze that in January or February just did not make sense. So if anyone has better intel, I believe as of now, there's nothing happening like that on Broadway.
And Martavius, what are you seeing in the artist community? Have auditions ramped up at all? Is there more? I mean, I know that some television shows have begun filming again. What are you seeing?
Absolutely. So obviously for a period, there was a high kind of demand for digital work. There still very much is. A lot of readings happening, a lot of Zoom readings, a lot of kind of workshopping of ideas, which is kind of hard given the limitations of Zoom. And as things kind of, sorry, I have a fire truck passing by, but as things start to kind of ramp up a little bit, what we're seeing, especially in the film and TV world, is a bit more quarantining and then being on set in a safe space, while still trying to maintain some semblance of social distance and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of where the world is. Unfortunately, that only applies for a very small percentage of the people that are in unions, actors who are seeking work, but the majority are either seeking some Zoom online opportunity or are actually able to go back to different shows or films that they've been working on after quarantine.
And what have you personally been up to? Has Lincoln Center been able to provide any opportunities this year, or?
Yeah, so there are definitely still some online curriculum building things happening. So I actually also tutor on the side. So basically everything that's happening with the schools is the same thing that's happening with any kind of artistic model that's going on. And so everything's been moved to virtual settings. No one's really trying to mess with, especially in New York City, no one's really trying to mess with in-person teaching at the moment. So everything's gone digital.
I
And
just want
Margaret,
to add one more. Oh,
what's that?
sorry. I was just going to add one more thing, which is really a big elephant in the room, which is that, 2/3 of tickets for Broadway are bought by people outside of the city of New York or the state of New York. And so the ability to bounce back and to fill those seats and to make it economically viable is largely dependent on tourism and how that comes back. I have to say, I'm actually not sitting in New York right now, which is where I normally would. I'm with my family in Atlanta for a bit, missing New York, to be honest. But I think I feel that not only are New Yorkers resilient, as is often said, but I think tourism to New York will also be resilient to the extent that our governor, who we love, allows it to be so. That's obviously been a big topic of conversation. But again, with 2/3 of tickets being filled by people from outside, the viability of it really will depend a lot on the pace with which tourists return.
Yeah, we think about that a lot. I mean, in the last 20 or 30 years, Broadway went from one-third tourism to 2/3 tourism, and we are a huge $1.6 billion industry. Again, $1 billion of that supplied by people not from the New York area. So it's not just about when we want to reopen or when it's even safe to reopen. It's about when can we reopen, and then a lot of people will come here and then they'll buy tickets to sit in the small theater together. So that's why we were the first to go, and unfortunately one of the last to come back, most likely. Margaret, I was going to ask you a little bit more about your year, and I assume it's been a little frustrating having the reopening date pushed back and back and back for you especially. Since it's your problem and you have to renegotiate everything that happens. So, so what has that been like, and how have you been? What have been the biggest challenges of that?
I love that. I think I'll do a 20,000 foot view, and I think I'll do a myopic view.
Perfect.
20,000 foot view. We've all seen this coming. Anyone could have turned on the news in March and April, looked at what was happening around the world, and realized that initial 4-week shutdown, there was no way. I think a lot of producers are naturally hopeful, so they all felt like we were going to be back after those 4 weeks. But I think anyone, especially we're talking among Duke friends, anyone who was able to pick up a CDC report knew that those 4 weeks didn't make any sense. And so that was sort of the 20,000 foot view. My mind was pretty much braced for about a year, even back in April. On a myopic level, the insurance claims are running rampant. I think a lot of these deals are going to get renegotiated. So even if you've paid a director or a designer in advance, well, what does that mean now that it's 2 years later and now that all of the union contracts have been overhauled, right? And then, in terms of the third thing that I'm really seeing, it's going to depend on a lot on how each individual small business is able to hibernate. So every show is a small business, but so is every GM office. So are most press offices. So we might see a lot of restructuring on the back end of Broadway.
I thought it was really interesting that about 2 weeks ago, they decided to announce Tony Award nominations, which was a somewhat controversial decision. For the uninitiated, usually the Tony Awards are announced first week of May, and a lot of shows that are eligible for them open in March and April. So we kind of, technically we got through 10 and a half months out of a 12-month season for the 2019-2020 season, but we missed the most robust month and a half. And so really it was only about half the shows and actors that were eligible. But the Broadway League decided to do nominations and kind of decide that was the season. And two great shows that I loved, two great musicals that I love, Moulin Rouge and Jagged Little Pill did super well. And a play called Slave Play did super well. But I thought it was an interesting decision because the Tony Awards really are a giant marketing and press event for Broadway, meant to sell tickets. And sadly, we have 0 tickets on sale right now. So I was just curious, Martavius, what did you think about that? Have you heard, I saw some actors who were even nominated kind of said, thanks, but this is not the time. I was curious how you personally felt about that and what the vibe was of that in the artist community.
Ooh, that is a hot seat question. I mean, I think what artists, especially on an actor's level, are really focused in about, of course, there's all of this stuff happening with Actors Equity and Insurance Week and no one being able to really work. So I think the overall kind of sentiment is congratulatory. Like, yes, there are some fantastic artists nominated. Adrienne Warren, like, I just happy to see her be rewarded for the work that she's put in on
Tina and the
Tina. Yeah. But I think the overall sentiment is really about support for the artists, right? So a lot of people have been out of work for weeks, months even. And so a lot of kind of wishing that the resources put into putting on the Tony Awards had been funneled into something that is more helpful for artists in general. But that being said, I think people are also overall very congratulatory for the people that were nominated. I don't think there's a lot of, those are kind of like the two mediums. Outside of that, there's not much sentiment about like how many people are nominated and it being a half full season. I think a few people have opinions about that, but I think artists overall kind of either feel really, really happy for the people nominated, or are just kind of wishing that time, that energy, those funds were being used in something that would be more beneficial for the artists at large.
So before we open it up to audience questions, which will be more interesting than mine, I do want to pose the same question to all of you, starting with Sara, which is, what is one thing that our audience can do to support Broadway and the Broadway community, whether it's tonight, this month, this holiday season, or anytime soon? What's on your mind if you had to pick one thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pick one, but I mean, there have been a tremendous number of virtual fundraisers put on by various organizations, whether backed by an organization or facilitated by a group of individuals, where you've been able to donate to organizations like Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, the Actors Fund, et cetera. So they've been really wonderful, and they've been going on for months and months and months. And so I would encourage you to watch and enjoy them and to give to these organizations that are supporting artists, and or just out of the goodness of your heart and out of the love for the arts that I know everyone on this Zoom has. Just donate, right? Just give, because this is these people's livelihood. There are millions of people around the country who are involved in making the arts happen through blood, sweat, and tears 24/7 on a daily basis. And the rug was just pulled out from them with sort of no other options and no other ability to earn income and be fulfilled and take care of their families. So I just think it's critical that we support those artists in the way that they need it right now, which quite candidly is through funds. So, and then when it returns, when our stages return and our theaters open up, go back in droves and support our arts all over the country.
The day tickets go on sale. Buy at least 5.
Exactly.
Margaret, what would you say?
So I've managed a handful of shows. I toured The Lion King, managed Mamma Mia, a bunch of Broadway shows. And what I saw over and over again, working backstage and handing out paychecks, there's this huge gender and pay discrepancy backstage. So an organization that I love, Open Stage Project, openstageproject.org. And I serve pro bono there as their executive director to get more women from underserved communities into these incredibly lucrative jobs that, to be quite candid on this phone call, are 80-90% white men currently. And it's just been this joy to work with this nonprofit to introduce all of these high school girls to work And so again, that's Open Stage Project, and feel free to check it out.
Amazing. Martavius?
Of course. Sarah hit on a lot of my points. The really big ones, Actors Fund, obviously, Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS. I'm also a big advocate of finding artists that are local to you, people that you know, Duke alumni even. I've been in a place of privilege of not having to suffer so much from the lack of work on stage. And so doing things like signing on to an artist's Patreon account or sending like a Venmo request to your friend who is an artist, any kind of local way that you can do that as well is directly helpful to the people who make their living creating art.
If I may add one more thing, I always have one more thing, and this is reminded of it because of Martavius speaking, actually, which is New York and the rest of the country are chock full of not-for-profit organizations that like Lincoln Center, like the Public Theater, not Broadway, but New York City Ballet, which will be Dark till next fall, the Metropolitan Opera, all of these institutions which not only rely on ticket income, but also contributed income from generous donors. Because of COVID, a lot of donations have fallen off. I don't know the exact numbers, but consider also donating to some of these really important not-for-profits in New York and around the country.
Well, I bet you all know what I'm going to say, which is BroadwayPlus.com. We have about 250 actors, all with Broadway credits signed up. If you've always been curious to know how a certain show works backstage, if you have someone in your life who you think might enjoy a singing lesson, a dance lesson, perhaps a Hamilton dance workshop, ooh la la, check us out. And that makes a great gift, especially this holiday season, and more importantly, supports an out of work artist right now. And also if you're looking for a group event for your company, some kind of celebration, we've been able to do some amazing virtual concerts, and it's been really rewarding. We have a lot of actors making their living on the site, which has all come together in just a few months. So check that out. And I'm going to hand it back over to Karen, who's going to help us get some audience questions. Hey.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Nathaniel, Sara, Beth, Martavius, and Margaret for that amazing, insightful discussion. I think we all learned a lot listening to you and really appreciate it. So we'll now begin the audience Q&A portion of the evening. We invite you to turn on your videos so that our guest speakers can see you. We can all feel more connected as a community. And I'll start with the first question, which I'll throw out to Nathaniel since he did a lot of asking questions and not so much of answering. But just curious, in your dealings with artists who are pivoting in the way that you're providing your services virtually, how are you seeing the impact of trying to keep that community morale up? Everybody, all of us are facing our own probable close to breaking points with this ongoing pandemic and never-ending uncertainty, and you're really interacting with people on a daily basis and providing an opportunity for them to practice their art and maintain that sense of going on. I'm just wondering if you could discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's really challenging. It's a really hard time for our community and our business, and pretty much everyone I know has lost almost everything this year. So it's hard, but that's why I decided to just pull my head down and do as much as I could. And if I can get one person $10 tomorrow, that's better than nothing. And thankfully I've been doing a lot better than that. But, it was interesting or I guess it was a few weeks ago now, they announced that shows would not be reopening in January. It would be the end of May at the earliest. And that was very expected news, but it was still really hard. I think people took it hard. Of course, we have to have hope and we have to be optimistic. And that was hard, but it also led to a really nice surge in sales on our end. And people around the country read that news and decided to support and to connect with Broadway in another way. We've been doing a lot of amazing school business, a lot of corporate event business. And you know, it's at least nice that Broadway is, of course, a great and well-known American institution and brand. And so people want to connect and they want to support, and I just do as much as I possibly can to help connect artists and people willing to pay for their time. So
Thank you. We have a question from the audience as to whether any of you are working with Governor Cuomo or other local leaders directly or indirectly on initiatives to assist Broadway or to facilitate any type of permitted activity under the circumstances.
not personally, I have some mentors who are. I'm not quite there yet. But basically the industry is in Governor Cuomo's hands, is my understanding. He will decide when we can reopen. He is being lobbied. Interestingly, this week, I think it was a consortium of 8 off-Broadway theaters, someone correct me, sued him because they said you allowed casinos and bowling alleys and what else? All these other like similar entertainments to reopen and not us, and that's not fair. So that was interesting. Has anyone else heard any ins with Cuomo? I mean, my understanding is basically he'll tell us when we can reopen, and then we'll decide whether we can sell tickets and take it from there.
I mean, I think it's quite odd, right? You mentioned, Nathaniel, a little bit earlier, 1.6, maybe even a bit north of that billion in terms of ticket sales on an annual basis. But the economic impact to the city is about a 10x multiplier.
Yep.
When you factor in hotels and restaurants and other ways that people come to New York and spend money. So initially it was odd when he put together a council of various leaders across different sectors in New York. Broadway and the arts were conspicuously left out. He has since added people from our industry, but given the economic impact and the tax revenue generated for the city, it is curious, for lack of a better word. But I think that people have now come aboard to try to steer it in a more rational way. So we will see.
So on a somewhat related tangent, another question from the audience. Do you see touring productions coming back before Broadway given the lower cost model?
Margaret?
No is my quick answer. My longer answer, and I think we actually have a couple audience members who toured with me on The Lion King on this call. So hi, if Michael or Angela are out there. Touring is sort of bifurcated at this point where we have union tours and non-union tours, and a lot of really interesting layers within that. So the union tours still cost just as much, if not more, than Broadway, because we're paying Broadway rates plus about $1,000 a week in per diem. Do the math on that. It's a good job. And then in terms of the non-union tours, maybe we'll see some things, but at that point, I don't know how you are safely flying or traveling entire companies across this country where you have hot zones and zones that seem to be okay, turning on a dime. That's why no is my quick answer. I would love to be wrong.
Yeah, I was just talking with a friend who books and manages touring productions, and initially there was a lot of optimism. I'm talking circa like April, May, that tours would come back sooner because New York was going to be the hot spot. Of course, now it's the opposite, and they can't really book a tour because they might route the tour from Texas to Florida to Atlanta, and then Florida has a huge spike and they can't go to Florida, but they still have to pay all the actors. It's just a mess. So it really there has to be a national solution at this point. That's my understanding.
Another question from the audience. Some regional theaters are doing online programs. I think we touched on this in the discussion a little bit. Recordings, webcasts of archive past productions, smaller show productions. Is there any comparable activity by Broadway companies And do you see any possible opportunities for that to happen going forward?
So the quick answer to that one is the Broadway musical about Princess Diana. And I don't know the latest or timing or if they've begun, but they're going to be filming the musical for Netflix.
They're finished.
So, oh, they finished it. Okay, great. So I don't know when it's going to be released, but they all quarantined together in some way. God knows how they did that with dozens of people. But it had just begun previews. Maybe I don't know if you guys remember. Maybe it was a week or so when COVID hit. And so we're really cut off pretty quickly. And I think this will be a really interesting opportunity for them to reach a much broader audience via Netflix when people are hungry for this kind of content. So I haven't heard of any other productions doing anything similar, but I think that is exciting and wonderful for those artists too.
So here's a question that doesn't relate to the current pandemic, but relates to each of you individually and everyone who is attending this event. What drew you to Broadway, and was there anything in your Duke experience that you feel helped you or that you draw on and use in your current roles?
I have a good answer in which all three of these people are featured. So I had an amazing experience in Hoof and Horn, of which Margaret partly initiated me into. And Hoof and Horn, for those who may not know, is actually, I think, legally a nonprofit. So you have to run everything. It's its own sort of business. You have to sell tickets. It has to break even. And I learned a lot doing that and loved that. And then my senior year at Duke, I received a lot of faculty support, and from Scott Lindroth, Vice Provost for the Arts, and Jeff Storer, and Hoof and Horn itself. And I was able to put together a huge production of the musical Ragtime that Martavius starred in. And throughout that time, I met a lot of amazing Duke alums like Sara, Beth, and Kara Barnett, and Preston Whiteway, who really encouraged me and said, you know, it's okay that you don't go to NYU, you can still have an amazing career. And they set a great example. And so I decided to pursue it. And every day I'm grateful I did. On to the next. What say you, Martavius?
Yeah, Ragtime was that turning point for me. I was pre-med. I was certain that I was pre-med. And I did Ragtime, and it was my first. Nathaniel, do you remember that the Trayvon Martin case happened during Ragtime? That was the turning point for me, and having that experience within that kind of next to that real life experience that was happening, and being able to tell that story just took on a completely different meaning. And I said, in that moment, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so shout out to Ragtime, shout out to Jeff Storer, who's been a really big guide for helping me on this pathway, because I knew nothing about being an artist at that time, aside from Hoof and Horn. So yeah.
Margaret, do you want to share?
Martavius, I did not know that about you. That's amazing. And now you are a full-fledged artist here in New York City. We got you. Rent, I'm not ashamed to say it, Rent the musical, and a lot of 4 a.m. nights with Nathaniel Hill where we would talk, but truly, you know, a lot of 4 a.m. nights where we would talk about theater. We would talk about how we wanted to get to New York. And, you know, a lot of our friends might've been out partying, and we were usually busy talking with each other late every night. And the Duke support network is nothing to be taken lightly.
We went to some parties too.
Well, of course, but that was just networking.
Sara, Beth, how about you?
As a Duke alum pointed out to me a couple days ago after seeing this post on Facebook, said that I'm the elder stateswoman of this panel. I came to this a little bit older than the rest of this group, and sort of wasn't involved in Hoof and Horn or anything like that while I was at Duke, but I always loved theater. And I did go on the Duke in New York program when I was a junior at Duke, which doesn't exist anymore. But the amazing Bruce Payne led it. It was Leadership in the Arts, a Duke semester in New York. This was 2001. And so I always loved it, always sort of said, oh, maybe one day I'll do something in the theater, and then had the very sort of lucky occurrence of meeting a very major decorated Broadway producer in 2011, about just almost exactly 8 years ago. And she really guided me and mentored me. And it just sort of came into my life at the right time. And I grabbed onto it really tightly and absorbed everything that I could and got involved in as many things as I could and figured out a way to make it happen. With respect to Duke, other than the Leadership in the Arts program and what that gave me, and taking Manny Eisenberg's class at Duke as well, it's been really gratifying to bring groups of Duke alums, Duke parents, et cetera, together to see the shows that I've worked on and to have discussions like this in person, which has always been great. And I've done that probably 3 or 4 times over the last few years. And so it's been a way to share things that I've worked on with the Duke community and sort of enhance that evening and that theater going experience.
Well, that's great. Thank you all for sharing that. So in the meantime, a few more questions have come in from the audience. We're brushing up against our time to go to the breakout room. So I'll just do one more. With all the pressure on cost that we've been discussing, do you think we're more likely to see up and coming artists in major roles in lieu of the big names? Or will there be a need to use stars to fill seats, and maybe who can adjust their salaries accordingly because of this factor?
That's a tough question.
I know, you tell us. Everyone put your video on. Would you pay $200 to see a no-name actor? You know.
It's showbiz. It's always going to be showbiz. But people are making a lot of amazing art right now. So hopefully we will see it produced. And there's been an amazing, I think there's been an amazing movement within the industry to make it more open and inclusive.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I also think it depends on the storytelling, right? Like there are the Hamiltons, right? Where you're going to pay money to see Hamilton, no matter who's playing it, right? If you can get a ticket. So I think it has to do with what shows are up and coming. I can see a similar thing happening with like Hadestown, right? So I think it depends on the story that people are pitching, and these new stories and new ideas that we're going to see coming out of this period that are going to dictate what people are drawn to post opening.
That's an excellent point. And it's like right up with the, classic New York story of creativity coming out of tough circumstances. We're just about out of time, but Sara, Beth, and Margaret, do you want to just add something?
I was just going to say that, you will see Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster in The Music Man. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind, considering the $8 zillion of tickets they had sold before this all happened. But you will also see the likes of Slave Play, right? Which basically it was like one of the edgiest things you'll ever see on Broadway, helmed by actually quite a young, very talented producer and friend by the name of Greg Noble, and a cast of actors that most of us had not seen. So I think there will always be room for both ends of the spectrum, and it'll take us some time to normalize, as Nate said, in terms of what will grace the stages when they first come back, but there will be a range.
Well, hopefully, because it's a smaller room, people will be more interested in Off-Broadway. Where a lot of more creative, riskier new work happens, and sometimes, Off-Broadway gives it a platform to move to Broadway. So that could be a great silver lining.
Okay, so with that, let's thank everybody for your rich and varied questions. This marks the end of our Q&A with our incredible industry experts. Can we all take this moment to turn on our microphones and join me in thanking our moderator, Nathaniel, and our panelists, Margaret, Sara, Beth, and Martavius, for the time and wisdom this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody buy Broadway tickets when they go on sale.
And of course, on behalf of Duke New York, DAA, DEMAN, and DEMAN New York, we thank you for being here tonight. Before we send you off to your breakout rooms, a few things to share as we get the rooms ready for you. Although Duke New York regional events are virtual for the time being, we invite you to connect with us on our Duke New York social media platforms, including LinkedIn, where our Duke New York board is working hard to support and promote career and professional news resources and opportunities. We also invite you to join us at our upcoming virtual events, starting with an event, DEMAN Live event tomorrow, Election Night 2020, trying to prepare for everything and maybe nothing, with the DeWitt Wallace Center for Media and Democracy and ABC News special events producer David Ryder, class of '93. Next month, Duke New York is presenting a November 10th after Zoom event, a chance to engage and connect with local alumni in breakout rooms following the Duke Alumni Association's Global After the Election event, two very topical and timely events that I encourage you not to miss. For additional details about these events and others coming soon, please check the chat and the Duke New York website and our monthly e-newsletters to learn the many things and ways you can engage and connect with Duke. For any alumni parents and friends who have the extra 15 minutes to spare and who would like to have a chance to mix and mingle with our panelists and other attendees, we're going to keep the Zoom line open for the next 15 minutes and create smaller breakout rooms where you can connect with fellow Dukies. For those who are unable to participate, thank you for coming. We'll look forward to seeing you on Zoom at one of our upcoming virtual events.
So I'm going to open up those breakout rooms for anyone who's interested, and we'll have you Zoom away. If you end up with only a couple people in your room, just hang tight and we'll shift you around. So hold on one second. Press the join button when you see it on your screen.
Hey,
Thank you all so much
Martavius,
for coming.
Was this
Thank
the
you guys. It was
production,
really great.
the background that I have? Is that you?
Drew, I was freaking out because I was like, how did you find that picture?
Okay, good. That's what, I just did that for you, man. That's it. That's all I did. I spent the whole time scouring the internet looking for this photo.
Oh
All right.
my goodness, that is so cool. Yeah, that
I
is the
love that
production.
you all came back. It looks like one of the rooms is hanging on for dear life before they get booted out. But thank you all so much for coming back. I just figured if people wanted to come back and have a chance to connect as a group that they could. And I don't know if Karen is still here or if she wants to say anything to close, but she's muted still.
Hey, Martavius, where are you in this picture?
I am actually not in the scene. It is it's the JP Morgan scene.
Oh,
It's like one of the few scenes where Cole House is not on stage.
I'm so disappointed. I have another one I can put up there. That's
It's really
hilarious.
cool though.
Oh my God, those are our Duke photos. Wow.
I
know,
love that 20
Hamilton.
people stayed on.
Yeah.
It is very Hamilton reminiscent. Yeah, pre-Hamilton.
Tory Bend, side of the curve.
I love that 20 of you stayed on. Thank you all so much. Karen, did you have anything you want to part with? I mean, I know we sort of closed the event
Awesome.
before, but
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody, really. I mean, there's no event without everybody here participating, our panelists, our attendees, and, you know, got to keep the Duke community strong through these uncertain times. That's what's going to get everybody through it. So really appreciate you guys taking the time to be here. I hope you
Thank you
enjoyed
for
it.
organizing it so beautifully, Karen.
Thank you
We're
guys. It
so
was
proud of you
appreciated.
guys. Thank you. This was really uplifting. It was really awesome. Thank
Sterling,
you.
I'll see you at the
Great job.
theater.
I mean,
Nathaniel.
say how Sterling and Jack and everyone, how is Duke? How are you guys all doing?
Honey, Jack is in New York. You may think he should be here.
Used
I've
to,
been in
yeah.
Durham since
Still at
March.
my house. He should be here. Duke is amazing. You guys, I mean, you read the news. We're doing it, knock on wood, day by day, better than anybody. It's just crazy, right?
Yeah.
You know, so I do academic advising, and I spent a lot of today with students, and and Lauren has a child here and others. It's hard, right? They're so glad to be here, but it's hard. Life is hard right now for these kids, right?
Yeah.
It's hard for everybody, but think about if you were a teenager.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
I keep up with the Duke dashboard, which shows number of tests and number of cases, and I am really impressed.
Yeah, it's
the number of
amazing.
tests we have is very high. The number of cases is relatively quite low. And to your point, Sterling, it's just Duke doing it the way we do it. And it's made me very proud.
Yeah.
Well, and Elon today posted like 220 kids down the road, 30 minutes down the road who tested positive, right?
Oh, no.
But you know what? But there for the grace of God goes us. We are lucky, and I think our students are really trying hard because they want to come back. But it's pretty incredible. It is. But they're amazing. They're smart, great kids. So.
And
One
I
thing.
should,
Proud of you guys.
I should know this. What's the one sentence update on Duke basketball? What's happening with Duke basketball?
It's happening.
I actually don't know because if you know me, I focus on football till football is over, right?
That was
it's
very
supposed to be
political.
happening, and supposedly the schedule is imminent. So I guess we'll hear soon. But I'm realizing one thing that wasn't addressed in the panel because we weren't really speaking to students per se, but for those on the call, make sure you update your profile in the network. Make sure you check those boxes to make yourself available to each other and to students. Duke and the career part of the DAA, Susan Gordon, they have a great platform called Ask a Blue Devil, where students and alums can type in a question, anything that they need help with, and the system is able to create matches to alums who can offer that guidance. So by updating your network profile, you make sure that you're making yourself available. And that's one of the best things we can do right now, is to give back to students who need that help, especially in this industry where it's so reliant. You all spoke to this, right? About alums helping you to navigate that path. So it's not a go to a career fair and find a job kind of industry.
And Erica, and we know, we're beginning to learn that next year is going to be even harder than this year. So it's really important. And so we're thinking about how do we roll out to really push people to update their profiles and to really help our students. So it's just hard. Yep, it is.
We can do it.
Staying connected is so key.
Thank you, Karen, for everything. Thank you all so much
It was
for joining
awesome.
it.
Thank you all.
Nice to see you
Awesome. And look at Drew, he's at Broadway.
Yeah. So there. Indeed. Yeah.